All right, so we're continuing on with Peace Pilgrim and looking at her life. And last week she gave us a little bit of an idea of who she is. That she was terribly concerned about the state of the world. This was in the 1950s or so, and uh, decided that something had to happen. And so she prepared herself and put together her message of peace, of reaching inner peace, because she said we can't have world peace until we all have found our inner peace. And she walked out of her house and never returned. She had a blue apron on with a pocket that had a comb, a pen, and a little small pad of paper. And she walked out on the vow that I will walk until I'm given shelter, and I will fast until I'm given food. And uh, I find that absolutely incredible. I mean, there's no tradition like that here in the United States. There's no one that she could have been following. She didn't do it for religious reasons or for heaven or for God. She did it for the love of humanity and for her concern of our well-being, a love for peace. And so I was so inspired by her and have been so inspired by her for many years. I wanted us to dig in. And so last week she was telling us a little bit about this her worldview, and she sees a higher self and a lower self in all of us, and that the higher governing power was called the inner light or the indwelling Christ for her. And the lower self, of course, is just the ego self, the self-centered nature, which she considered to be a formidable enemy of inner peace. And so today we're starting in chapter 2 under the section called Preparations. And this is just her description of how she got ready and how she prepared herself to renounce everything and to walk out with such an enormous test of faith. She says, I would like to mention some preparations that were required of me. The first preparation is to take a right attitude toward life. This means stop being an escapist. Stop being a surface liver who stays right in the froth of the surface. There are millions of these people, and they never find anything really worthwhile. Be willing to face life squarely and get down beneath the surface of life, where the verities and realities are to be found. That's what we're doing here now. Oh, very interesting, that we can live that very superficial life and just kind of stay busy, stay distracted all the time. And most of our activities when we're in that state are for that purpose. Instead of feeling what we feel, instead of sitting in the middle of our inner experience of things, and asking the hard questions about how do these things get fixed in our life? How do we find a life worthwhile? More and more as materialism kind of conquers our minds these days, we get our job, we follow the rules, we get our degree, we go out and work, and we're barely making enough to get by. And after a few years of that, you kind of come out of it. You stand up one day in your cubicle and you look across the cubicle farm hanging out in front of you there with all of us in our little cages doing our work every day. And you can't help but think, is this it? Is this, you remember, because I'm talking from my own experience of it. I was working for the California State University in the accounting department, and I had my little cubicle there, and I was the IT guy, and I'd been doing it for almost 10 years. And I just remember that day, one day I stood up and just kind of looked across this maze of cubicles. And I remembered my childhood dreams, of when I looked out at what life was going to be in front of me. I never imagined, that at 30 years old, I would be standing up looking over a cubicle wall, that I spent, 8 to 10 hours a day punching in front of a computer. And I just remember that awful feeling inside of like, really? This is it? I mean, this is my life? And I saw that if I didn't change, if I didn't make a difference, that this was it. This was all it was going to be. And that diving deep and asking those questions is quite difficult because for myself at the time, I didn't know what else to do. I still at that time really thought that it was something outside of myself. And so I started fantasizing about becoming an expatriate writer or maybe going and trying to get some job in the theater or maybe I should just travel. And I had a friend at that time named Dave who had gotten a job at McMurdo Station in the South Pole. And I thought, well, gosh, I could go out and do something exciting like that. And but asking those questions is quite challenging because I mean, in the face of it, what do? You quit your job? Well, that's terrifying to think of. You've got. I was living in San Francisco, and I didn't have any savings. And rent was a good chunk of my income. So what do? If you live on the surface, like most of us do, and I had been doing for a long time at that point, you're just distracting yourself. You're keeping yourself busy. I would get off work and immediately call friends and we'd go out and, do the things that we did, go to the clubs or go out and have dinner or go to a movie, anything to keep the mind, to keep my mind occupied because I was in a state anyway before I kind of stumbled upon my new life. Really just in a desperate attempt to stay busy, to stay entertained. And that's this living in the froth, staying at the surface, not diving deep within yourself, not taking the risks, not asking questions that you don't have an answer to, and not challenging yourself to really go beyond your safety zone to find life, to find what is it that makes this life worth living. Because in that frothy top up there, you can get away with existing for a while. But I remember walking up the hill to my house one night, late at night, after having my fun, and just thinking again. This was a couple of years after my cubicle thought, and just realizing that my life was not sustainable. I was like, God, the days are coming. I could see myself getting older. I was over 30 at that point, and I understood I'm not going to have the energy to maintain this constant distraction. I'm not going to be able to do this when I get to be an older man. And, I'm not going to look young. I'm not going to have a nice body. I'm not going to be able to afford the things that keep me distracted, right? That keep me interested. And that threw me even into more of a crisis. And then that idea of that night that I sat on the bed and realized that after all of my efforts, that I had really not attained anything. I was depressed. I was sitting on the edge of my bed and I was thinking, I've obeyed all the rules. I went to college. I got that computer degree, even though I wanted to be an actor, a performer. I got that college degree. I struggled through that. I got out. I took my job, was paying my bills. And I was like, God, and I was so unhappy. I was so depressed. And I looked around my room, as I've told this story to many people many times, obviously that I just realized everything had just gotten bigger. My little TV now was a big TV. My one room off the garage was now a house. My scooter was now a car. My little jam box was now a big giant stereo in the corner of the room. And I thought to myself, if I don't do something, if I don't change something, I'm going to be still sitting here in 10 years depressed with an even bigger television, an even bigger house, either a bigger car or maybe now I have to get two cars because I can't get a bigger car. you know, I could map it out and I thought that I'm still going to be the same person experiencing the same life in the middle of all of that. And that's when the magic happened. I remember saying to myself that night, I said, Vance, which was my name at the time, I said, I give you permission to do whatever you think you need to do to find happiness. And 2 weeks later, I had sold everything. I'd quit my job, and I had bought a plane ticket to Prague to become an expatriate writer. Still looking outside for my satisfaction, but at least it was the first step. But that was tough to do. That was challenging to do because I didn't know where it would end up. And so Mother here is telling us, There are millions of these people, and they never find anything really worthwhile. Be willing to face life squarely and get down beneath the surface of life where the verities and realities are to be found. That's what we're doing here now. She said there's the whole matter of having a meaningful attitude toward the problems that life may set before you. If only you could see the whole picture, if you knew the whole story, you would realize that no problem ever comes to you that does not have a purpose in your life, that cannot contribute to your inner growth. When you perceive this, you will recognize that problems are opportunities in disguise. If you do not face problems, you will just drift through life. It is through solving problems in accordance with the highest light that we have that inner growth is attained. Now, collective problems must be solved by us collectively, and no one finds inner peace who avoids doing his or her share in the solving of collective problems, like world disarmament and world peace. So let us always think about these problems together and talk about them together and collectively work toward their solutions. The second preparation has to do with bringing our lives into harmony with the laws that govern this universe. Right? Created are not only the worlds and the beings, but also the laws that govern them. Applying both in the physical realm and the psychological realm, these laws govern human conduct. Insofar as we are able to understand and bring our lives into harmony with these laws, our lives will be in harmony. Insofar as we disobey these laws, we create difficulties for ourselves by our disobedience. We are our own worst enemies. If we are out of harmony through ignorance, we suffer somewhat. But if we know better and are still out of harmony, then we suffer a great deal. Suffering pushes us toward obedience. Got a couple of people joining in here. All right. I recognize that there are some well-known, little understood, and seldom practical laws that we must live by if we wish to find peace within or without. Included are the laws that evil can only be overcome by good, that only good means can attain a good end, that those who do unloving things hurt themselves spiritually. These are the same for all human beings and must be obeyed before harmony can prevail. This is that notion of our divine spirit, our divine identity. You know, the sages of the world in all the traditions, actually, all the spiritual traditions, tell us that our problem is a matter of identity. We don't know who or what we are. You know, we stop at human being and just kind of leave it at that and just look around for examples in other human beings. But we don't know where to find out inside. We go to our mind, but our mind is just going to cough up things that we've read, heard, tasted, touched, or smelled, you know. It's not going to find the root of what we are. What is behind the mind? You know, and that takes a lot of inner searching, a lot of sitting and questioning what is going on and how am I working inside, that we've identified with a body and a mind, which is both constantly changing. And we answer to their needs as if those needs are going to make us happy. You know, that I want to go out and get pizza, so I go out and get pizza. I want to live in a big house, so I get a big house. I want a comfy bed, so I get a comfy bed. All of our desires are to satisfy our ever-changing mind and our ever-changing body. And if you try to make something that is constantly changing happy, good luck. You know, I just that's all you can say is good luck. You know, I remember at one point in your life, you love one thing, and so you eat it, and then suddenly you're sick of it. Now you want something else. You know, you get tired of it. And everything is like that. Everything becomes mundane. Everything that we experience repeatedly in life becomes mundane. And the brain begins to filter out any satisfaction in it. And so if we commit to making mind and body happy, we're just getting on a treadmill of hard work for our whole life to supply the ever changing stream of things that our moods, minds, and bodies demand of us. Right? We find that out. Like if you pick something you like, coffee. Well, at first, any coffee will do. Right? But then you want coffee from a particular place, a particular cafe, maybe. And then you want coffee from a particular cafe from a particular place in the world. And it goes on and on and on until you have to find a special place to buy coffee from that special place to bring home to have your morning coffee, right? And if you can't get it, you're in a mood. So this is our dilemma, right? These laws are the same for all human beings and must be obeyed before harmony can prevail. And so she was talking about this love that we suffer if we don't live according to love. And that's what set me off on this inner knowledge of who you are. You know, the sages have said that through their investigations, they found the nature of the universe and their own nature to be love, you know, and we can see that. Every song that we hear on the radio, if anybody listens to the radio anymore, every song, every poem, every book, you know, every movie, there's always love. There's always a love story in there, right? Love is something that is ours by nature, right? We dream of that perfect love, and we hope to find that perfect partner to build it with, thanks to Disney, right? And so we search for those things. So love is part of our nature. Wisdom is part of our nature, right? And being, our existence, our experience of being aware even of our own selves, a very unique thing in this universe to have that self-awareness. So these laws are the same for all human beings and must be obeyed before harmony can prevail. So I got busy on a very interesting project. This was to live all the good things I believed in. I did not confuse myself by trying to take them all at once, but rather, if I was doing something that I knew I shouldn't be doing, I stopped doing it and always made a quick relinquishment. That's easy. That's the easy way. Tapering off is long and hard. And if I was not going to do something that I knew I should be doing, I got busy on that. It took the living quite a while to catch up with the believing. But of course, it can, and now if I believe something, I live it. Otherwise, it would be perfectly meaningless. As I lived according to the highest light I had, I discovered that other light was given, and I opened myself to receiving more light as I lived the light I had. This is exactly that inner integrity that we talk about in the from Sri Ramakrishna. You know, that ideal that what we say, what we do, and what we think are always in alignment. And she's saying, if you know something is right, then do it. Don't leave it as a theory. Don't leave it as a philosophy. Put it into action. And if you know that you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing, stop it. You know, does this sound familiar from some of our past classes? There's one saint in particular, Brother Lawrence, that we read his book, The Practice of the Presence. This law here that she's saying is word for word his law that brought him to realization, that brought him to his joy, where he said he was experiencing moments of ecstasy throughout the day that were so disruptive he had to begin to try and find ways to hide them from the other brothers in the monastery he lived in. He just said, if I was doing something that I thought was bothering my beloved, and for him his beloved was God, you know, he said, if I was doing something that I thought was displeasing to my beloved, I just stopped, apologized, and went forward. If I wasn't doing something that I thought would be pleasing to my beloved, I started doing it on the spot. I didn't give myself a hard time. I didn't chastise myself for being at fault or for being evil. I simply began to do it and went forward. And so here, from a completely different source, we're getting the exact same advice. Live according to your inner knowledge, your inner self. Be in integrity with who you are, with what you think and what you say in this world. And then that statement that she had, if you do this, then the universe takes you to the next level. If you live in integrity with the light that you have, then the universe gives you more light. It puts more. And Jesus says the same thing. He says, "He who is faithful in little will be faithful in much." Right? And so it's so these small things in life. You start in life with what you have power over, right? I remember I tell that story in the San Francisco monastery. I was very discontent with the way the abbot ran the monastery. And I remember telling my friend Kantasamy, who was in the kitchen while I was washing dishes, I was just a novice. I wasn't even a Swami at the time or even a brahmachari. I was just a novice. And I had given a big 20-minute rant on what was wrong with the monastery and what was wrong with the way Swami was running things and how silly some of their decisions were, right? And I went on getting red in the face and getting more and more frustrated. And at the end of it, Kantasamy was this very old man from Sri Lanka, an adorable, kind-hearted person. And he just looked at me with those earnest eyes of his, and he just said to me, he said, "That's all very good." He said, "But what do boundary disputes have to do with farmhands?" Right? He says, "You're worrying about things of the abbot, those things that he's in charge of, those things that he can control. What are you in charge of? You're not in charge of anything. Why are you bothering yourself with all of that?" And that has a big application in this life. I looked around and I thought, well, what am I responsible for? And I thought, well, I'm responsible for taking care of the monastery, for maintaining the garden, for doing the shrine work and the worship. And so I thought, stop being concerned about things that the divine or that your life has not given you to have power over, right? Be concerned about the things that you have power over, that the divine has given to you to affect. It's hard in this modern world because we watch television and we watch the evening news and we find out what's going on in Zimbabwe and what's happening in Ukraine and what's happening in Israel, and we get all worked up into a kerfluff. And we can't, and it should, because of course those are violations. But that's not where your power's at. And we exchange the world that we can do something in for the world that we can't do something in. We'll get all concerned about, Russia and Ukraine, and we'll know the names of the leaders and we'll know the meetings that they have and the decisions that they have on the other side of the world, and not know who's on our local council, not know what our city government is up to, not pay attention to the board of the library and what they're changing in the library hours. You see what I'm saying? We know the names of the leaders across the world, but we don't know the people that are affecting the life and world that we live in, right? And so concern yourself with that which is within your power to change, so that you don't build an anger inside that can't be alleviated, so that you don't build a frustration inside that cannot be released, right? I'm convinced that this is the reason that we've got people walking into places and shooting them up, right? Because they're so angry and so frustrated by this unknown other out there that's so big and so far away they can't do anything. That what do? They go into a place and they just shoot at that other. They just let that frustration, that anger out against this faceless power that they can't seem to affect, right? In the old days, people owned businesses. You could demand to talk to the owner, or the owner was interested, right, in what you had to say. Nowadays, everything's run by corporate boards, and you can't talk to them. You can't complain to them. You can't affect change, right? And so we get frustrated. And so she's telling us, be aware of what's local to you and do what you have been given power over to do. She said there is a third preparation that has to do with something which is unique for every human life, because every one of us has a special place in the life pattern. And no two people have exactly the same part to play in God's plan. There is a guidance which comes from within to all who will listen. Through this guidance, each one of us will feel drawn to some part of the scheme of things, right? God's laws can be known from within, but they can also be learned from without, as they have been spoken by all the great religious teachers. God's guidance can only be known from within. We must remain open to God's guidance. God never guides us to break divine law, and if such a negative guidance comes to us, we can be sure it is not from the divine. It is up to us to keep our lives steadfastly in harmony with this divine law, which is the same for all of us. Only insofar as we remain in harmony with divine law do good things come to us. When you come into this world, your job in the divine plan are your plans, your jobs in the divine plan are there. They just need to be realized and lived. If you do not yet know where you fit, I suggest that you try seeking it in receptive silence. I used to walk amid the beauties of nature, just receptive and silent, and wonderful insights would come to me. This is amazing, an amazing teaching. This is something like Ramana Maharshi. This is one of his teachings. I was just giving a lecture yesterday about a Swami that I knew, Damodarananda, who was a student of Ramana Maharshi. And he said he would put his list of questions together and then he would go sit in Ramana Maharshi's presence. And he said he never had to ask a question as he sat in silence in Ramana Maharshi's silence, because Ramana Maharshi taught through silence. He said as he sat there, the resolution came within me and the questions seemed absurd. They didn't have any meaning when I was in that peace, that presence of Ramana Maharshi. And so we go inside, we spend this time developing an inner silence. Why? So that the inner world can become obvious to us. So that the inner movings, the inner promptings of our nature of what? Our nature of love and wisdom through our being, so that we can hear that inner voice. In the Vedanta, this is that inner guru, right? And everybody wants to hear the inner guru. Nobody wants an external guru, right? We don't want somebody else out there. But the problem is that as long as your inner world is noisy and unknown to you, you can't hear that inner guru. You make decisions based on egoism, based on emotions, based on anger, based on jealousy, based on whatever, right? But the inner guru only speaks when there's inner calm, right? You can only hear it when there's no noise drowning it out, the noise of egoism. Right. And so she's telling us, start cultivating that silence within, that peace within. And for her, that was to walk in the mountains, walk in the woods, spend some time alone, without your phone, without your computer, without your buddies. Just go and spend some time communing with nature. And why out in nature? Because nature will teach you harmony. The way the trees twist and reach for light, the way plants grow and nourish each other, each finding its proper place, right? You see how they all learn to work together, right? It's a constant struggle, but there's a harmony in the way everything works. And that harmony we call beauty. When it becomes apparent to us, we're like, wow, look at that, right? You begin to do your part in the life pattern by doing all of the good things you feel motivated toward, even though they are just little good things at first. You give these priority in your life over all the superficial things that customarily clutter human lives. Every morning I thought of God and thought of things I might do that day to be of service to God's children. I looked at every situation I came into to see if there was anything I could do there to be of service. I did as many good things as I could do each day, not forgetting the importance of a pleasant word and a cheery smile. I prayed about things that seemed too big for me to handle, and right prayer motivates to right action. I was filled with a runaway enthusiasm to help others, and one could argue that when I solved so many problems for others, I was depriving them of the spiritual growth problem solving brings. I soon realized I had to leave some good works for others to do and be blessed by. At the beginning, I helped people in simple ways. I helped with errands. I helped with gardening projects. I helped by reading to them. I spent time in the private homes of the elderly and the recuperating ill, assisting them to overcome their various ailments. I worked with troubled teenagers, the psychologically disturbed, and the physically and mentally handicapped. My motives were pure, and much of my work did have a positive and good effect. I used what I call spiritual therapy. I found all the good things that those I worked with wanted to do, and I helped them to do those good things. There were some who became too attached to me, and I had to work on breaking that attachment. My lack of expertise was more than offset by the love I extended to others. When love fills your life, all limitations are gone. The medicine this sick world needs so badly is love. I also did some volunteer work for the American Friends Service Committee, the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and the Fellowship of Reconciliation over a period of at least 10 years off and on. There are those who know and do not do. This is very sad. In this materialistic age, we have such a false criterion by which to measure success. We measure it in terms of dollars, in terms of material things. But happiness and inner peace do not lie in that direction. If you know but do not do, you are a very unhappy person indeed. What a beautiful commitment to integrity. That first she thought of the things that she was drawn to do, the things that she felt inspired to do. And then in a general way, she just decided just to do good things, good little things. She didn't run out to change the world. She went out and found out which neighbors were sick and mowed their yard, found out which neighbors were elderly and they went and visited them, spent time with them. The simple things. There's our I look at this, I thought, oh my God, this is always so self-accusing. I read these simple things like this from these teachers, and immediately I'm like, whew, we got some work to do. All right. We got some work to do out there. And so the thing is feel that inside. But don't be beaten up by it. Don't become hopeless immediately, like, oh my God, there's so much to do. There's so many people that need help. Start small, she says. Pick one thing a day and do it. And then do two things in a day. Simple things. Even if you start the day without knowing what one will be, just live a watchful life that day. Things will betray themselves to you. Help somebody pick up their trash, help some person carry their bag. These simple things. Just start having this attitude of watchfulness and readiness to do good things, to serve, to be helpful. And if we do well in a little bit, in a little bit, she says, that the world will give you more light, lead you to bigger things, lead you to things that may seem more important. Right? She said there is a fourth preparation. It is the simplification of life. To bring inner and outer well-being, psychological and material well-being, into harmony in your life. This was made very easy for me. Just after I dedicated my life to service, I felt that I could no longer accept more than I need, while others in the world have less than what they need. This moved me to bring my life down to a need level. I thought it would be difficult. I thought it would entail a great many hardships, but I was quite wrong. Instead of hardships, I found a wonderful sense of peace and joy, and a conviction that unnecessary possessions are only unnecessary burdens. During this period, I was able to meet my expenses on $10 a week. Wow. Dividing my budget into two categories, I allocated $6.50 for food and incidentals and $3.50 for lodging. Different times. But you see, she brought it down to food and lodging. Those were her two fundamental needs. And she brought those down to as low as she could bring them, right? Why? So that you don't have to spend all of your time serving your own needs, right? If you spend all of your money on yourself, and you live at a level that requires that you spend all of your time working for the money to pay for yourself, then you limit yourself, right? She says that's not the way to happiness. You can work hard, earn much, and spend it all on yourself, and it's not going to be meaningful to you. It's not going to produce that inner peace, that inner joy, because we are beings of love, and acts of love are what bring joy as a byproduct, right? Acts of love are what bring contentment and inner peace as a byproduct. And I say byproduct because they should never become the purpose. The only purpose is simply to express your love, to exercise love within you so that it gets stronger, so that it grows, and so that it affects more and more of the world around you, not just people, but everything around you. And to do good things that nobody's there to see, right? Walk down a city street and find a dirty cup on the sidewalk, pick it up and put it in a trash can. Just be the good person you know that you are inside. Show it. Let it manifest itself in any way with that awareness, growing that awareness, learning to hear that inner compulsion to serve, right? To give of ourselves. And it doesn't take long to think about what this world could look like if we all just took these simple preparations here that she has mentioned, if we all just began to live that way. She said there is a fourth preparation, this simplification of life, right? We talked about that. Now I do not mean that all needs are the same. Your needs may be much greater than mine. For instance, if you have a family, you will need the stability of a family center for your children. But I do mean that anything beyond need, and need sometimes includes things beyond physical needs too, anything beyond needs tend to become burdensome. If you have it, you will have to take care of it, right? I definitely noticed that when I moved out of my one room off of the garage. It could take me 10 minutes to clean my whole room, get it all set up. And then I moved into a house, and I don't think it was ever clean again. After that, I'd get enthusiastic about one or two rooms, and then I'd walk by the bathroom and I'd be like, oh God, no, not that one. Right? So keep your life manageable so that you have time, outside of your kingdom, outside of your stuff, outside of your place. There is a great freedom in simplicity of living. And after I began to feel this, I found harmony in my life between inner and outer well-being. There is a great deal to be said about such harmony, not only for the individual life, but also for the life of a society. It's because as a world, we have gotten ourselves so far out of harmony, so way off on the material side, that when we discover something like nuclear energy, we are still capable of putting it into a bomb and using it to kill people. This is because our inner well-being lags so far behind our outer well-being. The valid research for the future is on the inner side, on the spiritual side, so that we will be able to bring these two into balance, and so that we will know how to use well the outer well-being that we already have. Right? We just look at our world that we live in. You can see this immediately. If we just keep using our resources to get ourselves more power, if we just keep using our money just to make ourselves richer, you see what happens. I mean, that's the rule we've been following for quite a long time, especially in our own culture here. It's like the point of investment is what? To make more money, to invest more. But these investments are only for making money. And that's become the bottom line of our life. If I can afford it, I can have it. Right? If I can't afford it, I need to go learn how to get more money so that I can. That's the only question. You look at the way the government makes, if we have the money, we'll spend it. If we don't have the money, look. I shouldn't get into politics, I guess. But if you look around, look at the amount of money we as a country have, and then think that we spend over half of it on means of killing people. Right? We call it defense, but what kind of defense is it? Very rarely have we been put in a situation where we had to defend. Right? We use it to attack and manipulate. And so we have to be careful that we as individuals are not living that way, right? That we aren't just gathering stuff to gather more stuff. It's like making sure that we don't buy so much stuff that we then have to go rent a storage shed to keep it in, right? And when that one gets full, we rent a second one. You know, it's a thing we've got to be careful of, because it's definitely a tendency of selfishness, of keeping an eye in our own world. And as technology enables us to be more and more isolated and less in touch with each other, the tendency is going to be more and more in that direction. It's very important that we learn to live in the world of people where we you know I'm getting to be an old person because the things that I feel the most about this, I look at these new AI characters that are going to being presented as friends and alternative for romance and relationship. And I think that I can't think of a more sad thing that we live in a world full of people and that we're turning to machines for our psychological and emotional well-being, right? I can't think of a sadder situation. And this, I was talking to a mother the other day. Her daughter had just had a breakup with her boyfriend, and the mother was bewildered because the mother says, when I was a girl and I broke up with my first boyfriend, all of my girlfriends were over at my house that night, bringing pizza, bringing their sleeping bags, and having a sleep together, and supporting me, trying to get my mind off of my trouble, trying to remind me there's plenty of fish in the sea, don't be down. And she said, not a single person came by to talk to my daughter. All she got was a bunch of text messages, a bunch of thumbs up on her feed. But nobody was there for the emotional support. Nobody was there with a hug. Nobody was there with a touch. Nobody was there with friendship, like that. Words aren't going to do that. A Facebook page isn't going to do that. We need so much more than that. We've got a whole spiritual, psychological, physical self, and we get what we need from each other, from looking in someone's eyes and feeling their empathy, feeling their love for us, feeling their concern for us, you know. And we don't just get it for ourselves. We have to be looking and be aware and make sure that we're able to play those roles for others, to be there to take care of them, right? To just have this awareness again. It comes down to awareness. This standing with our eyes open, looking around, knowing the people that we know, knowing our circle, and extending that circle, right? And being aware, knowing who needs help, knowing what kind of help we can offer, and then not just giving words and thought to it, but giving action to it, going and doing. This is a beautiful teaching here for us. The next section she calls purifications, right? And I think we're going to stop here because we've got enough information to do a great to-do list for this week. So we'll stop here at the purifications for next week. But you know, I think what I'm going to do with this is just exactly that. I'm going to start a list. All right. I think I'm just going to start a list of things that I know back in Santa Barbara. Where can I find? Because my life there is pretty solo. And so I think I'm going to try and think of ways to get out into the community so I can become more aware of where people are at and what people need. I think a great place for all of us, if you're looking for places to start, is elderly folks. If you think that life is isolating for young people, just imagine how isolating it is for the elderly these days, you know? And so think of elderly people and going and just helping. You don't even have to do anything for them. Gosh, just going and saying, hi, I'm your neighbor. Just came over to say hi, to introduce myself. I imagine the amount of gratitude that you'll run into almost immediately will be overwhelming to your heart. Um,
Swami Steve,
Anybody? Yes.
I have a question. I'm so sorry. Did I
No.
interrupt you? Okay. Like you talked about suffering. You talked about suffering leads to obedience. Am I correct? Am I saying that correctly?
Yes. But
Can you expand on it?
yeah, so there's many ways to think about it. That also makes my hair stand up on the back of my head, like, oh, I don't want to live like that. But the obedience is not to a tyrant. The obedience is to your nature, to what you are. right? That you don't push against your nature, which means that like if you get angry, you solve it. You solve the problem. You know, because if you refuse to do anything about it because it's the other person's fault, you're in violation of your nature. Your nature is an unconditioned love,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so your nature, you feel it. You fight with your best friend, right? And you won't talk to them and they call you or you won't answer their text or whatever, right? Even though inside you, your only desire is to be reconciled with your friend, but your ego steps in and says, no, it's their fault. They did it. They said it. They're whatever. And so it's an obedience to that first impulse inside to reconcile with your friend. You
Okay.
know, when you see an old person that needs help, you know, you walk by them and you feel the impulse. But then the ego immediately is in there is like, oh, well, I don't even know who they are. Oh, I don't want to be presumptuous. Oh, somebody else will take care of it. Oh, I'm too busy. But your first impulse was to help. It's obedience to that, right? That's the divine uh, uh, guidance that she's talking about. She's calling it the impulse of God within.
Okay.
All right, but that's troublesome for some people to think in those terms because those terms have been abused quite often.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, yes.
There is a one thing like helping people. Nowadays, people have so distress, not believing in others. If you go and help someone, they have a distress on you that, oh, you may be having an ulterior motive. How do you deal with that?
Steadiness and not and don't be presumptuous, you know. Make yourself available and be consistent. You know, it
Oh,
is true. Somebody may not trust you because these are the days for that, you know.
Mhm.
We don't trust you. And so maybe don't, you know, don't push too
Mhm.
hard. Just be available. You know, maybe your first trip to your neighbor, you're not trying to get in the house and have coffee with them. Just go to them and say, "Hi, I'm your neighbor, and I just feel like I want to reach out and be available to the people around me, to my world. I want to become more aware and you know, so I just wanted to stop in and say hi and tell you where I live and let you know my name. And if you want anything or if you need anything, I just want you to know that I'm trying to make myself available for that." Right? And you can do that and just leave it at that day. That might be it for the first time. And then in 4 or 5 days, just drop by again and say, hey, you know, I made some cookies and I thought about dropping by and that I told you I was around and I just wanted to bring these over to just share them with you. Do you mind? I don't want to be presumptuous. I don't want to push my way in, but I'm really trying to be sincere in my life and my effort to grow. All right. So kind of like that. You make yourself available and trust will grow. The invitation will grow. And if it doesn't, then you keep looking. You move on, you know. So
hmm.
you don't push. Just make yourself available. And a lot of that helps, you know, if you do have a spiritual relationship or an ideal inside, if there is a God for you or an inner companion or an inner wisdom, pray, you know. You can work it out inside. But explore and be open to learning. You will make mistakes. You will offend people. You will break something. But if you do it because you were trying to care, if you were doing it because you were trying to grow, keep going. Don't don't trip at all. Just keep going.
Yeah. So I got my book already.
Ah, oh, excellent. There it is. Yeah, see, it's such simple things that
I
she
know.
that she mentions. You know, it's not deep, you know, philosophical truths of enlightenment and whatever. But these are the things that life is composed of. You know, the very simple things. That's the thing. We don't need to know anything more than what we know to move ourselves forward in our development, in our transcendence. That's why I say it's not classes that we need, it's not lectures that we need, it's not more scriptures that we need. We need to turn what we know into practice, into the way that we live. in a meaningful way. It's not good enough just to look like our neighbors. It's not it's not good enough just to do what everybody else is doing. Push against selfishness, push against isolation, push against callousness, push, you know, maybe instead of just throwing money at a homeless person, I saw a picture of Keanu Reeves the other day on the web where he had sat down with a homeless guy, just sat next to him on the sidewalk, and just sat there talking to him for a while. Keanu Reeves, for crying out loud.
Wow.
Just sitting down and caught by a paparazzi, just sitting and literally just chit-chatting with a homeless guy on the street corner. Start with something like that, instead of just walking by. Maybe not even just start giving money. Give something more than money, something more important. Give your humanity to that person, you know? Sit down and treat them like a person, not like a homeless person. Just say, gosh, I see you here every day. How is life for you? What do you think? What's going on with you? Don't come from a presupposed place. Why are you homeless?
Yeah.
Maybe that's not even a big deal to him. That could be the way he wants it to be. You never know. But open your heart. And I saw a homeless guy in Hollywood with a sign that said, if you can't give me money, give me a smile.
Yeah.
You know, because homeless people, if you talk to them, you'll find out that most people ignore them. They've fallen through the net of society and they're not treated like people anymore because we're afraid of engaging. We're afraid of being taken advantage of. We're afraid of finding a problem too big for us to do something about. And in our fear, we protect and hide or ignore. Right? Push against that. That's the obedience that we're talking about. The obedience to your nature to love. Don't let your ego come up with reasons to keep your love in a cage. Right? That's what's.
Swamiji, I went to a workshop one time, and
Mm.
like for work purposes, and there was this guy who uh, was one of the speakers, and he was so depressed. He was like ready to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge and ready to commit suicide. And it so happened there was a person who walked by this man and said hello and looked at him and smiled. That's all that person did,
Mm.
just looked at him and said hello and smiled and walked off. That changed him. It almost was like somebody cares. And then it
Yes.
turned him around and he dropped the idea of committing suicide. And then he was like talking in this seminar or workshop or whatever I was attending. But it was quite impressive. It was like a simple hello, a simple smile.
Yes. Yeah. And it might be just like that situation, just a very simple thing at just the right time.
Mhm.
You know? Yeah, at just the right time. Well, this is excellent. I feel a certain freshness of reading this tonight. I think I'm definitely challenged. It definitely reveals, we get into comfort zones. No matter what we're doing with life, we get into comfort zones and we just kind of keep doing the same things over and over in a lull. Things like this kind of poke me. They get me uncomfortable because I see those tendencies, in myself. So this is great. Well, maybe I don't know if I'd love us all to share like next week. Oh yeah, I went out and did this and went out and did that. And I think that'd be cool with one or two things. We don't want to start boasting with each other. But you know what? I don't think it would be a bad thing to boast for a while on some of these things, to share your experiences. If you go out and do something, do share it. If we build ego on being loving people, I'm fine with that.
Can I share a story, or it's also a question at the same time?
Yes, Olga.
When I was in India, especially first days, I was so overwhelmed with the poverty there. And everybody was just begging for money. And at one point, I was surrounded by a number of people who wanted me to buy something from them. And I just started crying. I burst into tears because I just didn't know. I didn't feel it possible for me to help everybody. and I didn't know what to do because there were like old women, women with children. They were all begging. Everybody needed help. It was very hard for me to decide how much to give, to who to give, and actually, I also had to count money because I didn't have like inexhaustible resources myself,
Mm.
and I didn't was a really big dilemma. So finally, I decided at one point, and I ran into a Buddhist monk there, and I asked him this question: how do you deal with this kind of situation where everybody is in great need? And he told me, like, if you look at somebody's eyes and you connect with them and you feel touched, then it's maybe your karma to give them. If you don't connect, just maybe it's not your karma. You have to walk. And I remember I ran into one young man who didn't have any legs. He was like riding this little cart. And I looked into his eyes and I felt how he was actually trying to intimidate with his eyes, with his look, these Westerners, rich Westerners, so that they would give him money. And I felt I wasn't intimidated by him. I just I gave him money. Oh, I gave money. I mean, I set aside certain sum a day. I would give away certain amount of money every day, so that, and then that was it. That was my decision. But that's the question. I never could actually be quite comfortable with the fact that this very thin Indian man who would drive fat Americans or fat Europeans in this little, how to call this, carts, just one.
Rickshaw. Yeah.
Yeah, that was so awful for me.
Yeah.
I couldn't get on one just because I felt disgusted by this kind of um by the Westerners doing that. So anyway, that's the part of I don't know how to make decisions about this kind of level of need people have in this country and other countries.
Yeah. There's not an easy answer to that question. My first thing is, one, definitely you can't go beyond your own means.
And then how do you draw the line? What is your need? Because what we really need is way, way below what the way we live,
Well,
in this
that's
country.
true. That all is what you do in response to what we read tonight. Figure out what do with as little as you can reasonably, and bring your life down to a matter of need and not just a matter of desire. That's one step she's talking about, and be emotionally available. And if you don't know, it's like when you, especially like in India, when I was there also, that's a very it's an outrageous thing to deal with at first, to be, because I remember in Rishikesh there was a very old woman who I could tell was a widow, who had nothing. Her shack was falling down, and she was sitting on the porch of her house. And I went over. It was early in the morning. I was on my way up to a temple, actually, and it was very early in the morning. And I went over and I just handed her a 10 rupee bill, because I thought clearly she's in need and she's one person. By the time I handed her that bill and turned around, I had like 40 children around me, poking at me, asking for money, right? And it's overwhelming. So clearly you can't just go around handing out money. That's not the solution that's necessary. But you can get to know somebody. You could sit and give that woman that money. I'm just right now just kind of wandering with my thoughts. I don't think there's a clear-cut answer to this. But as an idea, develop a relationship with somebody, and then you can find a more meaningful way of helping them, right? Not just throwing money or just putting money in a cup or something, because that's very temporary and it's really not help. It alleviates you of your sense of obligation in the moment, and it gives them a little trinket for lunch, but it's not, the problem's not solved, right? And so there are ways, that you can take the money that you have, and instead of giving 10 rupees to 200 children, you could, through relationship, find out what is it that this village actually needs. Oh my God, they don't have clean water. Well, for $500 in India, you might be able to solve that problem. You might be able to help them to create something that will make a
Yeah,
lasting
tell me
change.
about that story. Tell him about that.
You know, so you just
One that we went to.
you explore new ways.
Okay.
It's a problem that there's not an answer to, but the answer is how can I help? And that's for you to determine. And you think about the best way to do that. You can see that giving money isn't going to be the answer. It's going to alleviate the immediate, but it's not going to alleviate the problem. And so look for ways of finding that out. Look for ways of getting to know somebody. Go find somebody local that might know. Start investigating to find out what are the problems here. How come this exists? What's happening here? And how can we make that? How can we make a change in that?
It's very good to start with the local shelter, you know.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing is you don't have to take up a solo project. You can join in with people who have already started asking these questions. You know, you can join in with projects that are already happening and be a partner to those.
I
So
think very important is just this connection, what the Swami is talking about, like connection and really finding out what people need, because pretty often, like working in a hospice and oncology, like people do things, but it's like uh, sometimes it's because people feel uncomfortable in a presence of someone who is dying, who is sick, and we do things just to kind of numb our discomfort. So this is also sometimes, and they feel it. They feel it.
yes,
And so like connecting and what I think, maybe really not something what they think and where they are. So that connection, and even if in our kind of ego side, we will not fulfill that need of being a good person and helping, it's okay. If there will be only on the level of connection and that smile and that little conversation, but that's what that person need actually is I think the most important thing. One of the books I really like Ram Dass is talking about, it's called How Can I Help? It's about like not being a helper, because then we put the other person in a position of someone being helped. So it's like kind of we already put ourselves in that superior, I would say, position, that we are that person who is gonna help the person who is in need, right? But when we just connect, it's we're on the same level. We kind of like, and sometimes actually we get more from the person we think need help than that person, because it may be that we need actually more that day than the other
mm,
person, and that other person may be even stronger than we are at this moment. And I had situations like that I thought I was there in service to be there and help, and actually that person said something or did something, and it was amazing exchange of energy and of like just good intention and connection, and that was it. So sometimes it's not necessarily something really material or something to do, something to give. Like with
yes,
oncology, like we have those small huts, and there's this women from the church, and they make those huts for oncology patients. They are for babies, and no
yes.
one takes those hats, and they're beautiful,
Very good.
but they're like for
Very good.
babies. We don't have children there, so that's
Yes.
why this connection is so important. Because just go there, see these people, and see what they want. And
Yeah.
actually, someone did that from the other church,
Right.
and they brought
Excellent.
the coloring books,
Right.
and
Got it.
people love it. These coloring books, because they're bored, they spend hours on the
Yes, we
computer.
got it. Thanks,
So
Hannah.
actually, someone made the effort, and just to see who is there,
Yes.
and
Right.
just
No, excellent point. Make that connection. Violet, you had something?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer up something that could be a practice or just something to experiment with if you're a praying person. You can make like these little deals with God or Mother. Say you go to a store and you have $5 left over or $10. You say, okay, Mother, if I see someone on the way walking home or driving home that asks for that, this is your decision to make. Or if there's somebody who you saw and you're like, I feel like I should talk to this person. You're like, it's up to you, mother. If they're sitting outside or if they're here when I go for a walk, I'll do it. So it's kind of third partying it in a way where you don't really have to make the decision. You say, you make the decision for me. If this person's here, if somebody asks me something for this, I'll agree to that. Okay, that's your decision.
Yes, yes. Well, that's a good point. I know someone who used to take $5 out on a walk with the intention of giving it away, and they prayed before they walked, saying, "Mother, I have $5. Please show me who needs it. Please show me someone who could be helped by it." So you can do it that way, but I think this connection, and I think really the most important thing is nurturing your desire to care, nurturing your courage to push back past your boundaries. It's not about changing the world. It's not about fixing all the problems, right? It's us learning how to be human and how to be true to our nature of love and wisdom. And I think once those doors start opening, and once we get some experience, and once we get some situations behind us, we're going to learn, and we might learn the answers to these questions that we're asking right now. But I think the experience of going and doing anything is going to be valuable, and to be careful not to be crippled by these questions. The world is big, and the need is much larger than any of us can fix. And a lot of these needs will never be fixed, right? But they're opportunities for worship. We worship the God in each other. We worship the divine spirit in each other. Ramakrishna says that's the highest form of worship, is to serve living beings, right? And so I think just start. Let the questions answer themselves as they go. Just start and do. And if you do it prayerfully, you do it with wisdom, you do it with awareness, things will work themselves out. Just don't be discouraged. Don't be overcome by unknowns. Be bold in it. Make your mistakes. And if you make your mistakes on the side of love, good for you. Keep going. You know. Yes,
Um,
Laurie.
Swami, I'm sure you remember the poem by Hafiz that ends with a line, something like, "Dear God, what love mischief can we do for the world today?"
Love mischief. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Excellent. Yeah, go out and be mischievous in a loving way. Yeah. Go out. Yes. I think that's the important thing. Don't go out to solve the world. Don't go out to solve problems. Don't go out to make the biggest difference you can. Go out to love, and do that in any way that it happens. And it's you are better for it. They are better for it. And just keep doing it. And if you're faithful with a little, you'll be faithful in much. If you are responsible with the light that the universe gives you in this moment, you'll get more light. And these answers you can teach us as the universe teaches you, you know.
Swamiji,
Yes.
is it all right if I say something
Oh, surely.
quickly? I like what you were talking about and bringing out of the text this integrity and the earnestness with which you approach being a good person, because I think we can sort of dissociate from that aspect of the path. It's like, no, we do want to be good people.
Mm.
And that can come all the way down to very internal levels of how we talk to ourselves, how we interact with other people. And if we're
Oh,
like, no, that can cause harm, I should correct that. I want to be a good person. I want to be a better person. So I can earnestly and express that earnestness in so many ways. So.
that's right. Yes. That's it. And her point is that this does start within yourself. This does start with your own being aware of who and what you are. We don't necessarily know that we're loving beings. A lot of us has been told that we weren't. A lot of us are broken because of bad relationships and difficult life situations. And so we have to learn to trust that. And I think that that's a lot of what we do for others is really doing that for ourselves, right? Once we witness the fact that being aware and caring, when we see how that affects us and how we grow from that, it becomes not one-sided of us helping others. It becomes mutual because we begin to understand that this is my nature, and serving others is serving myself. Taking care of others is taking care of myself. And so it's not one-sided. It's a situation of mutual gratitude, of understanding that really there is a oneness there. And I think that's the value in seeing your work as worship and not as helping, you know, but worshiping the divine in everyone, in each other. And to start with awareness of your own divinity, that the reason we hear these things and the reason we want to move is because you are divine and you do have a beautiful love inside that is desperate in some cases to get out, to be expressed, that we find and develop the courage inside to be loving when we may get nothing in return, you know, to be caring, even though we may do it wrongly, to be helpful, even though we might make a mistake, right? And to reach out, even if we get hurt, even if someone strikes out at us for helping, right? That we don't have expectation in what we're doing. We're simply being true to our nature. All right.
Thank you, Swami.
Wonderful to see everyone again.
Great advice. Thank you.
Yes. Be well.
Swami.
Good night. We'll see
Good
you.
night.
Night.
Indeed. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye, everybody.